Today, the USGA and the RNA issued an update on distance in the game of golf. The latest step in this important project aimed at ensuring a healthy future for the game. We're joined today by USGA CEO Mike Whan and Thomas Pagel, Chief Governance Officer for the USGA. Mike, Thomas, great to have you with us today. Let's jump right in. Thomas, why don't you start with giving us a little bit of background on the long road that this distance project has been?
Yeah, thanks, Beth. And it has been a little bit of time to get to this point. I think most folks watching are probably familiar, but some may not be. In 2020, we issued, along with our partners at the RNA, the Distance Insights Report, which was really the most comprehensive review and study of distance and its impact on the game, long-term impact of the game. We followed that up last year in 2021 with what we call an Area of Interest Notice, which is just a document we share with manufacturers to let them know a broad range of topics that we're interested in looking at within the equipment rules as a way to perhaps address distance. And today we find ourselves really narrowing our focus within that area of interest, and we've communicated to the manufacturers two discrete topics that we want to research moving forward.
Mike, you're still fairly new in the role, a couple months,
Yeah.
couple months in now. Can you give us sort of your perspective on the distance project, being still relatively new to the USGA?
Yeah, it's funny. I thought I was pretty educated on distance when I walked in the door, but it's amazing what you don't know. And it's amazing every time you sit on a plane and you wear these letters, and I'm sure this happens to you all the time. It's like, oh, you work for the USGA. Let me tell you about distance. And you start to realize how many myths there are versus reality. And I'll say some things here that Thomas has heard of, but I get the whole, please don't regulate our golf balls and clubs. Don't put limits on our golf balls and clubs. And I think probably a lot of fans would be surprised to know that the RNA and the USGA have been working together for equipment standards for over 100 years. So this is neither new nor something that we're uncomfortable with in terms of making sure that we build regulations that protect the game and make sure the game is thriving for years to come. I hear all the time, I can't believe you're just going to wake up one day, make a change, and we all just have to deal with it. As Thomas said, I mean, it's a slow process. It's by design an iterative process. So we are going to definitely take steps along the way. This is not something in terms of distance or equipment changes that's going to affect your game this year or next year or probably even the season after. But we are going to go through a long process of making sure that every time we take a step, we also step back and hear the feedback from manufacturers and others before we take the next step. So this is just one of many steps along the way. I'm sure you get this all the time, Thomas, which is, the game is as good as it's ever been right now. Why do you guys feel like you have to get involved in the game now? I mean, now when things are this great, I mean, I assume you get some of that.
I get it all the time, and the answer is we agree. The game is great right now. The game is strong, and we want to build on those strengths. But one of the reasons the game is so strong is because we were prepared for this, right? We had people 50 years ago worrying about what the game would look like today, and frankly, that's what we're thinking about today. We're thinking about the game 50 years from now. How can we ensure that our kids and our kids' kids have a healthy and thriving game to enjoy just as much as we do today?
And last thing I'll say, Beth, that happens to me all the time on planes is, hey, there might be a distance problem on tour among the elite, college players, but not me. I still can't reach the bunker on 10, So we get that all the time. And so what I would say to you is, relax. We're probably agreed on that topic. And this distance project is, in fact, very focused on the highest or the most elite level of distance, and at the same time trying to minimize the impact on the average recreational golfer. And I think as Thomas will probably get into in more detail as we walk through this AOI, not only to minimize the impact, but maybe even free up some innovation space so that manufacturers can even be a little less confined when it comes to things we can do to make the game easier, more fun at the average or recreational level. And so we get it. I mean, we understand that the distance isn't an everybody problem, but as Thomas said before, but it is a responsibility we need to take serious because we need to make sure that the next 50 years can have the kind of growth rates that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, Mike, you asked Thomas, and he talked a little bit about why now and why does this matter. Can you expand on that a little bit as well?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, there's virtually no refuting the fact that the average driving distance over the last 100 years has gone up, and it's gone up pretty steady over that time. I mean, even more shorter term, in the last 50 years on the PGA Tour, the average driving distance is 40 yards longer. And what does that mean? That means they're playing golf courses that are generally about 450 to 500 yards longer. The average golf course over the last 100 years is somewhere like 650 yards longer. And maybe the average fan says, I don't care if my golf course is long. I don't care about those tees back there. I don't play them. I get that. But a longer golf course and longer tees means a lot of things. It means more maintenance, more resources, more water. It means slower to play. It means more expensive. Whether you know it or not, maintaining a golf course that size does result in greater cost, and those greater costs gets handed back. Probably most concerning is if a golf course has to be of that acreage to get built in the first place, we're just not going to see golf courses anywhere near a city going forward. You'll see fewer and fewer places that have the space to put on that kind of, and while it may not bother a golfer today, there's plenty of places for you to play. If we're jumping out, as Thomas said, to talk about our kids' are they going to have opportunities to play if the only venues that you can really play golf have to be that large and that expansive? So if we don't address this, it's irresponsible to just assume that the game will be healthy 50 years from now. So this isn't a change that's going to make a huge difference to the average player today, but might make a huge difference to the game long term. And luckily for us, the RNA and the USGA were thinking about this 50 years ago, and it's our turn now to have the same level of responsibility for the next 50.
Yep. Super helpful. Thomas, Mike referenced now, why now? He also has addressed a little bit of what this is not. Can you talk a little bit about what this is and you know what this means and what this will be what this will look like going forward?
Yeah, sure. And there's a lot there. So I'll take it from a couple of respects. First, what this is, and then I'll talk a little bit about process. And what this is, as I mentioned, this is a more focused area of interest, right? So the area of interest is that technical document we share with manufacturers saying we want to look at these specific areas. Today we're looking at two things. We're looking at both clubs and balls. As it relates to the golf ball, we're reviewing what we call the overall distance standard, which is our primary measurement for how we regulate and control the distance a golf ball can travel. This test has been around since 1976, and when it was first implemented, the testing conditions were set to replicate the longest hitting golfers at the time. That equated to about a club head speed of 109 miles an hour. Over time, the game evolves, players evolve, so do tests and standards. And in 2004, we most recently updated this standard to 120 mile an hour club head speed, which was at that time, again, a greater reflection of the longest hitting players at the time. As we sit here some 18 years later, we sit back and we reflect on the data, and that 120 is now closer to the average than it is on the long. And so what we're suggesting is let's look at those test controls. Let's look at how a golf ball is actually hit by the players at the elite level that are hitting it the longest, and can our test better replicate what they're showing? And perhaps that's not today, but also into the future as well. And then on the golf club, we're looking at a model local rule that will focus on both CT, which is essentially trampoline effect, and moment of inertia, which is like a sweet spot on your driver, right? The reason we're looking at a model local rule is, again, is there a way to help benefit or to allow for an on-center hit to be rewarded more so than an off-centered hit? And so this model local rule, it'd be used at the elite level only. We wouldn't recommend that it be used at the recreational level because, frankly, recreational golfers need a larger sweet spot. At the highest level, perhaps that's not the case. So we've put out those two areas within this notice, and now we're just going to spend the next 6 months, as Mike said, sitting back and listening. We're going to listen to manufacturer feedback. We're going to listen to feedback from other stakeholders to understand their perspective on these two topics. From that point forward, then we'll sit back along with our partners at the RNA and we'll analyze whether or not a rule change should be made in the future. To Mike's earlier point, this is a long process. We can't come out and make a statement that we're going to change a rule and have it take effect anytime in the near future. It takes time for the game to prepare for change, and our process reflects that.
I think it's important to point out a couple things that Thomas said in terms of both the golf ball and the golf club. In the golf club assessment, we're really talking about something that would be implemented at an elite level and really have no impact on the average golfer. In fact, in this AOI, we're even suggesting that should we do this model local rule for elite players, we would open up more room of innovation for the average golfer. So there might be more golf club innovation available for the average or beginning golfer. Same on the golf ball, but when we're talking about a golf ball being hit at 125 or faster club head speed, unfortunately, that doesn't come into my play of my game, 125 mile an hour club head speed. So lesser impact for somebody who swings it at a slower speed than somebody who swings it at a higher speed. So in both of these cases, whether we're talking golf ball or golf club, two things are true. Much more focused on the highest end of the game and minimizing, if any, impact on the lower level of the game. And in both of those AOIs, in both of those club and ball assessments, we're both trying to also at the same time free up innovation space for the manufacturers to be able to even go after more new and unique ideas for the beginning and average player.
Thomas, can you provide some historical perspective for what we're doing? Does this represent a significant change in approach?
Yeah, it's a good question. No, it doesn't. I mean, as Mike referenced, for over 100 years, we've been writing rules around the equipment, and the game evolves, right? So you write rules, it defines how the game is played. The game evolves, rules evolve with it. And so, as I mentioned before, this initial overall distance standard was initially introduced in 1976. It was updated in 1986, 2002, again in 2004. So this is a process that we go through where we're always looking at the rules and standards to make sure that they're appropriate for the modern game. And so this is no different.
Yeah, the real reality of it is it's been 20 years since we've looked at this standard, and maybe the learning that we've taken away from this is we'll have to look more often, because athleticism and training and course setup, everything is different and moving fast. So we have to keep up with the pace as well, just to make sure our equipment standards replicate the highest end of the game. We don't want to get in the way of that athleticism. If you're longer, we want you to be longer, and we don't want to take length away as an advantage. So these tests, I think, still allow the longest player to be the longest player, still allow athleticism and the future of the game to be bright and exciting, and at the same time try to keep the game inside our stadium, if you will, so that we have places to play long term.
And in terms of moving this forward, Mike, what are next steps?
Yeah, so as Thomas said, it is a process, and the process has built-in stop points, which is, knowing me, stop points is probably wise, because I need to learn how to be a better listener, and this requires better listening. So as Thomas says, we come out with an AOI that says, hey, these are the areas we're looking at. These areas in balls, these areas in clubs. Stop, listen, hear from the manufacturers, hear from the tours, hear from the fans and the media. And we'll get back together in September when all that data is gathered and reassess. Meanwhile, during these 6 months, we'll be doing more research in these areas as well. But it forces us to say, tell us what you're thinking, hear what we have to say, and then take us to the next step. So this time next year or earlier, we'll be back talking about even more specifics on how we see this process. Most importantly, I think for the average fan to realize, you're never going to see us on a video saying, starting Tuesday, the following things are going to happen to your golf club or your golf ball. That's not the way the process works. So very open and transparent process to get there. And then when it's really time for us to say, this is what we're doing and this is the date we're doing it, we have to give years, not weeks or months, advance warning, so that the manufacturers, the championship directors, the tours, and everybody else can build for that change. So this is one where we have to be a little patient, but at the same time, it's worth it to take our time and get it right.
Well, I certainly appreciate the two of you taking the time today to have this important conversation. Great discussion. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate you taking time to learn a little bit more about the latest step in this project. For more information on equipment standards and USGA's role in governance, please visit usga.org/playing for more information. Thanks so much.